All right, so this next section will be on CSS. So we did a quick and dirty review of HTML. HTML being just the structure of the web page. Like what are the words that are showing up on the web page? How large are the words that are showing up on the web page? You can kind of think of this as more or less the skeleton, the foundation of any given building. CSS, on the other hand, is a little, let's not do that. CSS, on the other hand, is a little slightly different. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And the emphasis on the word cascading means that the last style line of code is what is rendered by the browser. So the last thing that shows up on your style sheet is what's actually showing up. So if you have two different styles that are named the same thing, like if you have two different styles for paragraphs, the last one that shows up is going to be the one that takes precedence over the previous one. The relationship between HTML and CSS is kind of like building a building. The architecture of the building is the HTML. CSS refers to like the paint, the color of the windows, the size of the windows, how tall it is, etc., etc. CSS is just how it looks. On the web, HTML contains and expresses content. CSS styles the content that you already have. So let's say we have a heading right here. When we look it up over here, it just says this is a heading and it's black. So how would I apply CSS? There's a few ways. One of them is I would just do H1, and this is called inline styling. I'm styling it directly in line. I just do style equals, I don't know, color is red. We'll just make this a red paragraph, a red heading 1. So right now we have a black header. What we got to do is do some inline colors, inline styling, by putting it directly with the tag over here. And then I can change this into red. I can also change this into yellow. Or I can change it into, well, why is this not coming out? Okay, so no one can see that, but this actually is a yellow heading. Let me just change it back to blue for right now. So this is one way that we can use CSS directly with our HTML. We can put it directly in the same file. We can create what's called an internal style sheet. So let me just grab that for you real quick. Let's break down this little bit of code. So we have an HTML document because it's ending in .html, but sometimes we just want to be absolutely certain, so we just throw these HTML tags on the outside. And as you're starting to see, indentation is pretty important here, because like I could throw everything just like this, but you have no idea where any sort of element starts and no idea of where any element ends. But because I have it styled and indented properly, I know that head starts here and ends down here. Body starts here and ends down here. Style starts here and ends down here. So indentation is very important when it comes to this. Now, inside of an HTML document, there are two main things that you need to worry about. The first one is head, which is all that metadata that I was talking about, your Google Analytics and your, anything else, like your style sheets, your images, anything that shows up that is not going to show up on the page, but you're going to need somehow, shows up in the head up here. And then you have the body. The body is what's showing up actually on the page. So as of right now, I have a body. Inside the body, I have a single element. It's a paragraph tag that literally just says paragraph. Now, this is what's called an internal style sheet. It's looking for a style sheet between lines 3 and 5. And this is saying every single paragraph, I'm going to change the color of it to red. So let's jump over here, and I refresh, and it just says paragraph. And this paragraph is a red paragraph because that's an internal style sheet here. Now, these first two things that I've talked about, having something, maybe color is equal style blue. Real quick, what is going to show up? What color is going to show up on the screen? You had a guess. You think it's blue? Probably blue. Let's take a look. Looks like it's blue. And this is the emphasis on cascading style sheets, the C of CSS. even though in the very top I said that the color of every single paragraph was going to be red, because I've overwritten it down here on line 9, this takes precedence over line 4. So the emphasis on cascading means the last bit of style code that comes out that's being rendered read by the browser is actually what's going to be executed by the browser. The two ways I've done it so far, this is called inline, and then this is called an internal style sheet. Both of these are not really what we like to do. Sometimes you'll see it, so it's important for you to know. But most of the time, you're going to link to an external style sheet, meaning that HTML documents are literally in charge of HTML. CSS documents are literally just in charge of CSS. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to create a link to an external style sheet. So maybe I'll rename this as index.css. This link that Leanna was talking about a little bit earlier on line 3 is to create a relationship between HTML, the document here, and an external style sheet. Here it's going to be index.css. The href of it is just a file that's on our particular machine. So let's save this here. I don't know where this is. Let's do index.html. And I'm going to create a new file called index.css. So I have an HTML document. All it's in charge of is just HTML. Inside of my CSS, all I care about is CSS. I'm just moving it from one place to another, but best practice does tell me that I want to have a separate style sheet. If I jump back over, I just want to make sure this works. Oh no, something's gone wrong here.
You moved the file so you can open.
Yep, I'm on the wrong place. Browser. Bring this over here. Let's grab this. All right, so again, we have this particular HTML document. All it's in charge of is just doing HTML purely. Inside the head is all like the non-verbal stuff, all the metadata, all the links to external style sheets and things like that. The things that you need to show all the stuff in the body, but is not actually going to show up, goes inside of the head. Everything that goes inside the body is actually what's showing up on the page. So inside this body, I have a p tag for paragraph, and I'm looking for any sort of style. So it looks like I can make this style. Every single paragraph has a color of red. And the way that this is generally broken down is selector, property, and value. So the selector basically says every single element with this particular identifier, so every single element with an identifier of p, I'm going to change the property to wherever the value is. So I'm selecting all the p's, changing the color from red, changing the color from whatever it is to, I don't know, purple. Just make sure that this works. Maybe I want to align this to the center or something like that. Let's do color purple. Maybe I'll do text align to the center. I want to make this not be here on the left. I want to move it to the center. So all I got to do is just add that extra little CSS right here, and just everything moves over to the center. So in our specific example, we have a selector. So it selects all the p's, takes all it aligns the text, which is the property, and puts it to the center, which is the value. But again, let me do it again. Selector, property, and value. Now, there is a lot of stuff when we talk about CSS properties. There are hundreds, I would say. Might be even in the thousands. These are all different types of CSS properties. There's an animation property, there's an appearance property, there's a background image, background color. Maybe I'll just do maybe I'll change the background color. What's the most offensive thing to go with purple? The most ugly, brown. Sure. Now, change this to brown and purple. I don't know if you can see it, but there's this tiny little thing in there that says paragraph. So there are no shortage of CSS properties that are available, and you can kind of peruse them at your leisure, but there are quite a few of them. The last little bit that I want to talk about with CSS is called CSS Specificity. So let's say you have earlier we were saying things like, what if we wanted to divide the page into different divs, right? Like different little sections. Maybe I'll move my paragraph 1, move my first paragraph here, and then I'll have maybe a class or something like that. There's different ways to break up your CSS, your HTML document. There are divs, which will break your classes, break your document up. There's classes that can break your document up. You can just put it in as a paragraph or as an H1 or something like that. But what happens if you have a div, this first div has an ID of paragraph 1. Then you have another div, paragraph 2 or something like that. You're just trying to break up your site up a little bit. And you can kind of think of this as if you're on Amazon.com. Let's not go to Amazon. Let's go to Walmart.com. You can kind of take a look at this, and you can kind of see there's probably different divs set up. Maybe there was a div for this header area right here. Maybe there's a little div for this small little section right here. Maybe there's a div for this carousel section. In fact, we can actually just take a look ourselves. How did they name this? So I'm not looking in my head anymore. I'm now inside of my body. So you can kind of see there's different divs to break up different sections. I'm gonna make this slightly bigger. This particular div wraps around this smaller div, which wraps around this smaller one. There's a page full wrapper. There's a sponsored content at the top. So you can kind of see, and you can't see it very well, but this section, this div, goes to the very top of the page. There's a page for page content wrapper, which is just wraps around this whole section right over here. Yeah, there's many, many different divs for different sections of the page. It's just how they chose to organize the HTML code. So, but what happens if you have a div class or ID elements with style conflicts? Let's say div, all the divs has X style, a class has Y style, this ID has Z style. The browser doesn't know what to do. So basically there's specificity built into CSS, which means that the higher the weight, the greater the superiority when styling conflicts occur. So basically, any selector that starts with this is going to have a weight of 0.001. Class has something of 0.010, and ID has something of 0.1. And what this means is anything with a higher weight is going to take precedence. Remember, CSS, cascading style sheets, the last bit of style is the one that's going to be executed. So let's say I want to have I have something for a paragraph, but ID, I want all the stuff that's nested underneath ID to have well, let's just try this out. I'm going to split the screen into 2. Let's say all my paragraphs, I want the background color to be brown. But at the same time, I want to take everything that with an ID of paragraph 2, I want the background color to be white. So all I've got to do is I've got to select the ID. So to select an ID, it's hashtag. I think it's paragraph 2. And then and then I do background color is white. HTML specificity literally just means one thing takes more weight over the other. So if I've done this correctly, paragraph 2 will have a white background with purple letters, and paragraph 1 will have a brown background with purple letters. So let's see how this works. Something went a little strange here. So I have paragraph 1 seems to, did I mess this up? Am I doing this backwards? Higher weight, the greater the superior styling complex. Okay, there we go. All right, so the first time that I did this, I had every single paragraph was going to have purple text, be aligned in the center, and have a background color of brown. That's this first one here. Purple text, centered, background of brown. That CSS specificity was just for this particular tag. It had a weight of 0.001. So if I had a class, it would look a little different. And then I just decided to go with ID. ID has a higher weight, which means that, so when I apply an ID over this paragraph, and I gave it an ID of paragraph 2, I selected all things on the page with an ID of paragraph 2, and I changed that background color to white. So even though these two things are conflicting, because I told you, this particular paragraph is supposed to be brown, because I've given it the weight, the extra weight using this ID here, the background color is actually going to be able to read white. We can kind of see that right here. Even if I were to flip these, you might say, oh, it's the last thing that shows up on the page. But even if I flip these, you can kind of see the white goes on the top and the brown goes on the bottom, because IDs are more important than just all the tags in general.
If you put the ID above the CSS file, if you put the ID above the paragraph tag, like just
you can't.
7 through 9 above line 1 CSS file.
You can't.
Can't do that.
No. So that's a little bit about CSS. As you can kind of tell, the difficulty is, it takes us so long to do such basic styling. If you've ever tried to do anything purely with CSS, it takes quite a bit of time. So a lot of people use CSS libraries and JavaScript libraries just to make their lives a little bit easier. Because if I told you to recreate Hacker News, it's not terrible, because Hacker News is written in Web 1.0, and it's done here on purpose because hackers, developers, computer software people, whatever, they spend all day making things pretty for modern consumers. So it's but in reality, all you really need is something like this. So this is all the stuff for Hacker News. This is all the news that relates to hackers that you would ever need. Doing stuff like this is fairly simple. I have looks like this is an HTML block element that's just kind of like a header. The background color is orange. It looks like number 1 here is slightly transparent. Maybe there's a CSS property for that. But if I were to tell you to go over to lift.com and then redo all of this in CSS, it would take you probably 100 years or something like that. Probably not 100 years, but it might take you years to finish to get it to look like this. With that, some people decided to make something called Bootstrap. So Bootstrap is an open source CSS and JavaScript framework originally developed by Twitter. So if you go to Bootstrap, I don't know if I just go to bootstrap.com. I'm afraid to look. Getbootstrap.com. Bootstrap 4.0 is basically an open source CSS and JavaScript framework originally developed by Twitter. So Twitter started this off. They open sourced it, meaning that here's all the code that happens underneath the hood. Everyone in the world, please start making it better. Similar things have happened with React and Facebook. So Facebook created their own JavaScript framework called React. They thought was like the next hotness, and then they were doing everything internally, and they decided, let's just open source this. Let's open source this so that everyone can make improvements on it. And now we have things like React. I don't even know what version React is on, but it's like the most popular front end framework. Similarly, Bootstrap is a very popular thing. They have different versions, and they're on 4 point whatever it is right now. There's a lot of pros to having Bootstrap. So if you jump over to like Creative Tim or something like that, this is a website that's built in Bootstrap. This is a digital agency somewhere in, where are they? They are in Romania. And this is an example of a Bootstrap website. So let's refresh this just in case. And what you'll notice about this, there's a lot of pros to Bootstrap. It's mobile first, which means that if this is configured properly, the smaller I shrink this, it will automatically adjust to whatever size I decide to take it to. So you can kind of see it was 1 line before, I make it even smaller, and now it's 2 lines. I can continue going on, continue making it smaller until I get to the mobile view, and it looks a little something like this. So it does like reformat based, like the images will get larger, and the images are also going to get smaller based on like the size of your screen. It's going to adjust because most people are moving towards mobile. I think the most recent poll was like, I think 50% or slightly over 50% of online users are now on mobile. So making sure that your website is mobile and responsive is a very big important thing, because otherwise you end up with give me a crappy government website that you had to frequent when you were.
The worst I've seen is California DMV.
California DMV. Maybe they updated. I don't know. I haven't tested this one out, but the DMV, yeah, like. All right, so it might be mobile responsive. It is mobile responsive. No kidding. Okay, they did update it. Okay, give me another.
I got a good one.
Okay.
Sacramento Zoo.
So I'm on the Sacramento Zoo website.
The worst I've seen. Oh, they changed it.
Oh,
Wow.
this is really nice now. This is not looking so good for you, Raven.
Wow,
It is definitely a mobile responsive website. You can kind of see as I'm like shrinking and making it larger, they're showing up on the page.
So, like, what are they using?
Who knows? Let's find out. When we right click it, they might use Bootstrap. Who knows? It looks bootstrappy. What's that?
I was just going to say, I think you have to pick a website that's not designed in California to find a bad one.
Yeah, maybe we'll find something in. No, I'm not going to rip on any towns here. All right, let's see. We have Google Analytics, they have Facebook, CSS. Let's see. Okay. Bootstrap, right there. Bootstrap CDN Content Delivery Network. So this is actually, at least some parts of this are built in Bootstrap. So there's a lot of really good positives to Bootstrap. It's mobile first, meaning that if you write Bootstrap code once, it'll scale for mobile, it'll scale for iPad, it'll scale for desktop and for very large screens as well. It's compatible with all major browsers, so you don't have to worry about, is this going to work on Internet Explorer? Is this going to work on Firefox and Chrome and Opera and things like that? It works across all major browsers, going all the way back to Internet Explorer 9. On top of that, they have great documentation. It just says, looking for a quick place to start, just copy and paste this inside of your link and throw this at the very top inside of your JavaScript. And you can have different things, like here's a starter template, and it'll look a little something like, it has great documentation. There's a lot of support around it because a lot of people use it. But the bad part is like something like this. Hey, look, it's every Bootstrap website ever. It looks very homogeneous. You can kind of tell if someone's used Bootstrap because it looks like every other website in the world. So I found this to be kind of humorous. Hey, look, it's every Bootstrap site ever. Take a look around. and you'll see the same thing that you've seen 10 million times before. It's like you click this and it makes the page scroll. It's like you've seen this 1,000 times because it's been used 1,000 times. So it's like, you want to make an original website yourself? Forget that. Who would ever want to put all that effort in? Just type in Bootstrap template and throw it in there. So there's lots of this is kind of like a funny play on words, like not play on words. This is kind of just a funny thing because everyone uses Bootstrap templates now. Like a lot of small businesses, a lot of just a lot of people use Bootstrap. So it's like this template, the same set of 4 icons, lots of effort, made with love, etc. Yeah, and there's literally the template is found right here. Oh no, why can't I find it? You can find it. It's actually pretty simple to find. But yeah, in reality, it does look really nice, but it does look very homogeneous. Many things do look like this. Even there's a company called Warby Parker, which is an extremely hipster glasses place. Even when they're not trying to do Bootstrap, because this is not Bootstrap, it looks like Bootstrap. It looks like there's a header of some sort. They have like not 4 icons, but now they got 2 icons. Here's another thing over here. I don't believe that they're using Bootstrap anymore, but it does even still make them kind of look like they're Bootstrap. So go on any website, right-click, inspect element. If you think it's Bootstrap, check it out. Maybe it is. Jump over to the head right here. And you can kind of look around right there. Bootstrap. You know it's written in Bootstrap. I don't know. Let's go Illinois DMV. Oh, it's still stuck in. Oh, this is not it.
Go to IDES.
It is mobile. I'm kidding. But yeah, as you can kind of see, like most people are trying to make things more mobile friendly because most people are able to afford phones, but may not be able to afford computers because computers are a much larger purchase. So just kind of think of that as you're going. Actually, I think eBay.com. I have notes over here. It says eBay is an unresponsive website. Let's find out. Nope, it's not a responsive website. As you can kind of see, so eBay.com is not a responsive website because when I shrunk it all the way down here, I have to like look to the. I still have to scroll back and forth to the reason behind this crystal dragon down here is when my wife was younger, her dad bought a crystal dragon, and he really liked it, and then she sat on it and broke it. So we were trying to say like, we still remember we're gonna get you a crystal dragon. And then he says, don't get that for me, it's useless now. But so yeah, even when you go to eBay.com and you kind of like scroll left and right here, the ability for me to scroll left and right just shows me it's not a responsive website. If you were on a phone, you have to scroll right to hit my eBay or something like that in order to get anything to work. And the same thing with YouTube. The reason why eBay doesn't have a mobile responsive website is eBay actually has its own app, so they don't actually need to create a mobile responsive website because they have a separate team that does an app for you.
The app is like a terrible replacement though. Like I hate that every time I go to Yelp, it gets mad at me because I don't want to open it in their app because I don't want to download it.
Yes, that is yes, I don't disagree with you on that one. Yeah. Now, a few things I wanted to point out with Bootstrap is something called the grid layout. So the grid layout is basically this idea that every single page is broken into 12 columns. So when you have 12 columns, you kind of imagine this entire page being split into like a section of 12. If I wanted something to take up half the page, all I have to do is do call-md-6. So for all medium screens, I want something to take up half the page, I'm going to use 6 of the 12 columns. So I would just do call md6, and then that would be something that takes up exactly half the page. If I wanted something to take up the entire page, I just do call-lg for large, 12. That takes up the entire 12. If I wanted to do call sm, I could do one of 3 different columns, and this would split this call sm right here, splits the screen into three different sizes, like a thing of 4, a thing of 4, and a thing of 4. So you're splitting up the screen into like different sections. You can read a little bit more on this one. So it's kind of like if you were to break things up, it's kind of like 1 of 2 and 2 of 2, because this whole thing is in a row class right here. This is all under one particular div. These things are going to be split evenly. I'm not really a Bootstrap expert, but that's generally the idea. You have the whole page takes up 12 columns, so small things will take up 1 to 3, medium things will take up 4 to 6, and then large will take 6 to 12. Right. So a lot of talking. We have one little section left, which is just today's stuff on jQuery, and we'll be good to go for either if you want to retrack anything like from the previous few days, or if you want to just jump in and get started with today's jQuery stuff. So let's take a look at jQuery.
I just have a quick question. Is Bootstrap considered a framework?
Yes. So Bootstrap is considered a framework because a framework literally just means that it's thousands of lines of code that someone wrote ahead of time. And Bootstrap underneath the hood is probably millions of lines of code that somebody wrote ahead of time to make your life easier. So it is a JavaScript and CSS framework. Okay.
But React is just JavaScript framework?
Mm-hmm.
Not CSS.
It is not a CSS framework.
So what is the benefit of, let's say, a company, Facebook, Twitter, to create a framework?
Question was, what is the benefit for a company like Google, Twitter, Facebook to create frameworks like Bootstrap and React? For one thing, it's a dedication. It's further dedicated. One, they have a ton of money. Right, they have a ton of money. They have a ton of people, so they're able to do great things for the technology world as a whole. So, like that's one big thing. They're giving back to the community, saying like we're in it with you for the long haul. Open sourcing it means that like the stuff that we use, that we spend a lot of money on, we're able to just kind of give back to the ecosystem for everyone to use. 2, it assures that every single time that somebody talks about React, they talk about Facebook. You know, because it's kind of like, oh, who created that? React is directly correlated with Facebook because they're the ones who created it. Or Bootstrap is directly correlated with Twitter because they're the ones who created that. And then 3rd, it also ensures longevity in the marketplace. Any framework that's backed by a large company is going to stick around for a long time. So if you think about like Java without Oracle might not be Java, right? Like that they have such a huge backing. Oracle has such a huge it's such a huge company that backs Java. That's probably not going away. React is backed by Facebook, so it's probably gonna there was like the holy wars of JavaScript libraries for a long time. There was Angular, and then there was Ember, and then there was Backbone, and then React came in and they killed everybody. Like it's going to go around for a long period of time. There's all the financial firms use like C++ and C# and things like that. Go is backed by Google. So all of these things just kind of ensure longevity for those particular languages.
you also get like the benefit of open source community work. So if I'm using React and I find a bug, I complain about it. That's a service I did for them so they can make their code better for their own product.
Yeah. Yeah, and by open sourcing, you like when you have 1,000 people looking at code, it's different when you have 100,000, 1,000,000 people looking at code, because that's probably the number of people who are actually looking at any particular library at any given time. Not million, probably like a few 100,000 are looking and using the code.
So this is publishing like a gym.
Yeah, very much so. That's true. All right, so let's talk about jQuery. So a quick review. So HTML refers to the content, what's showing up on the page. What are the words that are showing up? What's the structure of the page? CSS refers to the style of everything that's showing up on the page. And JS is the behavior of stuff that's going on the page. We're going to talk a little bit about Ajax tomorrow, but an idea of like what's happening on the page with JavaScript is if you've ever gone on Facebook or YouTube or a lot of sites right now, if you go to Twitter and you scroll down to the bottom, it never ends, right? You go down to the very bottom of the page and it never ends, just that little circle that starts going off, and then new videos or new tweets or new stories on your Facebook feed will show up. That's an example of JavaScript that's happening behind the end. It detects I've reached all the way at the bottom, and then I'm going to make a request in the background to get a bunch of information and bring it back on the screen. So that's like an example of JavaScript. So as a result of JavaScript, we're able to change content and style based on user actions. So it's like if you visited a website before, it's like it's no longer blue, it turns purple, right? That's generally what happens when you click on a link and you've already been to the website before. That's an example of how JavaScript changes some things. So jQuery is basically a giant library of, where did my page go? Nope. jQuery is a giant library written inside of JavaScript to make like life pretty easy for us. So first things first, it helps find elements in our HTML document. It can change HTML content and CSS styles. It can observe and watch what a user does and react to it. It can animate content. It can talk over like our networks to retrieve data. It's pretty powerful in terms of like what it's actually able to do. Let's say that we wanted to, how much JavaScript did we do last week? We didn't do any JavaScript? Okay.
There's a couple of examples. People did JavaScript in their script tags.
Okay, that's fine. All right. When we learned about vanilla JavaScript last week, we learned about code that looked like maybe like document get element by ID. Does this look familiar to people?
Yeah, we did that.
It's like we have the entire document. We're going to grab some sort of HTML element but by its ID. The document is actually the entire web page. And what happens is your browser creates a tree-like structure. This looks a little something like a tree with like it starts at the top and kind of gets bigger towards the bottom, kind of like a gross Christmas tree. The browser creates a tree-like structure on every web page. And this tree-like structure that looks a little something like this is called the DOM, or the Document Object Model. Inside the DOM, you have HTML elements which become nodes which are related to each other in some way. So you can kind of think of it like parents and children and things like that. So, but this is like a visual illustration. So we have the top of the tree, which is an HTML document. It points towards two things, a head and a body. The head has all the metadata that you might need, so all your search engine stuff. It links to external style sheets. Maybe you have your own. Maybe it links to Bootstrap. And then on the other end, it also links over to the body. This body contains many things, maybe a like a p tag, maybe a div with an image in there, which says hello students, and then it has another span for like web performance and stuff like that. This is what's created when you load your particular your HTML and CSS into the browser. It creates a tree like this that allows me to interact with the DOM. So when I go to something like Facebook.com, and let's say I go to this particular div, let's say I reach all the way down to the bottom, I hit the content at the bottom of the image, and there's no more pictures on the screen. Maybe at that point, JavaScript will recognize, hey, this particular DOM, you've reached the end of the tree. There's nothing else there. So JavaScript will reach out, and then it will make a request in the background and then come back and, give me more stuff, for example. JavaScript essentially just gives us a language to interact with the DOM. So instead of typing all of this type of stuff out, because this is what we were doing last week, like document get element by ID, and then document there's a whole bunch of other techniques that went along with document. Instead of typing all of this out, jQuery makes that a lot easier for us. So the first thing that we need to do is load jQuery on the page. All we need to do is just add it as a script on the top here. Come back over, just make sure we have the right one. API documentation. Nope. Right here, sorry. Now, what we've done here is we have created an HTML script, HTML element. This element has an opening script tag and a closing script tag. And the source that it's reaching out to is ajax.googleapis.com. So every single time that your web page loads, it's going to make a request to googleapis.com to get jQuery inside of your HTML document. Before, we had to do things like, let's say I wanted to select, let's just create a really easy one. We're just going to have H1. Okay. Just see if this loads first. All right, so we just have one simple H1, HTML H1 that says, hey. If I wanted to use old JavaScript, which is what we were doing before, we'd throw a script at the bottom. How would I select this H1 right here? Probably look a little something like, let's see, let something like this. In order to actually select the H1, like the entire element here, it looks a little something like document query selector or document get element by ID of H1. Now all we got to do is H1. All we need to do. Instead of doing document get element by ID or document query selector, all we got to do is just this $H1. There's a lot less typing. So I'm going to try this out on my own right here. Let's throw it in here. What have I got here? So I have the head, HTML with the head, and this is all the stuff that's non-verbal and that's not going to show up actually on the page. I'm making a request immediately out to jQuery to get all of their code in. And inside of this particular script, all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all the H1s and change all of the text from whatever it is to hi. So what do you think is going to show up on the screen? Pretty much it. So I refresh this page, and this comes off as hi. Even though I've this H1 says hey right here. On line 6, what I've done is I've said when the document is ready, like when everything finishes loading, I'm going to select all of the H1s using this $, this jQuery $. I'm going to change all of the text from hey into hi. That's pretty much it. Last week when we were doing front-end stuff, did we have to put the script at the bottom of the page? Do people remember that? This is brand new. Okay. No, I'm not going to go over this. Okay. Some things to think of in general is that when you're talking about JavaScript code that's going to execute on your HTML, you have two options. One is you're either going to put it at the very bottom of your HTML document, like at the very end, right before the closing HTML. And the reason why you put it at the very end of your HTML is that you need your entire page to load before you run any sort of JavaScript. If I threw this JavaScript at the very top of the page, you're going to run something before the document loads. So it might, if you're, let's say that you were looking for like, I don't know, like let's say that you were look for the H1s and change all of the content to boop. Right? So if I were to go inside, if I put this at the very top inside of the head, and I had some code that did this, and then I had the body right here, nothing would happen to the actual page because this executes right away. And there, when it executes right away, there are no H1s on the page. So to alleviate this, what a lot of people end up doing is they throw the script at the very bottom of the page. When you throw it at the bottom of the page, it's ensuring that everything is loaded onto the screen because code reads from top to bottom. It ensures that everything is loaded on the screen, and then it runs this. jQuery kind of takes some of that away, having this document ready. Where did jQuery takes some of this away by having this document ready in the head. This document ready basically says when the document is fully loaded on the page, like meaning I don't have to just throw the script at the very bottom of the page. When the document is fully loaded, at that point, execute the following piece of code, which is find all the H1s and change all the text to hi. So that's a kind of like a very, very basic overview of jQuery. Let me show you what we've got for today. All of the things that I've said this morning are here inside of your curriculum. There are 3 challenges, and I would actually start with the bottom one first. I'll reorganize this in just a second. And they're talking about jQuery. The first one is basically, it's called pizza code structure. So here is a giant piece of HTML code, and your choice, your particular job is to, using jQuery, when you select all of the list elements, you want to change all the text to unos. There's a lot of things. You just kind of like follow along with what they've had here, and then see if you can pull apart what they're doing. There's another one called pizza traversing, which is basically I have a similar HTML document, and my goal is to, when I hover over them, using jQuery, I can get like an entire menu to show up on the page without making an external request. Yeah. Any questions on anything so far? I guess we did HTTP, we did HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript and jQuery.
So when it comes to running jQuery, is it best practice to put it in the head or at the bottom, or is it just developer's choice?
It is. So jQuery, the best practice is put it in the head with the script tag, and then have the document ready thing at the very top.